Hello and welcome. Today I am joined by Gregg Roberts, who is Finance and Operations Director and Senior Physiotherapist at the White House Clinic. Greg, how are you doing?
Good. Yes, good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So yeah, in terms of your job title then, so I know that the Senior Physiotherapist is at the end of that, and you've got these two other quite big chunks of things. Because I know you've got a big operation that you are running there. So talk to me, how have you ended up in that role?
It's a really good question. Yeah, it wasn't planned. I think when I set out I always wanted to be a physio really from my teens. Go off to university, do physiotherapy. I love treating patients. Patient facing time has always been my priority. But as I've then got into the business here at the White House Clinic, opportunities are arisen over the years. Initially, I was kind of offered the ops role first, and that had come around just because I really enjoyed the sort of problem solving to our sort of physio setup, whether that was like our patient diaries or just day-to-day efficiencies. I always kind of had an interest in that side of it. So the ops sort of role came first, and that was, I suppose, I was very fortunate to have that sort of opportunity presented to me. The White House Clinic at that point was a sole owner who sort of set it up 50 years ago, initially by his mum actually, but then Jason took things on 35 years ago, and then the business has just sort of evolved from there. The finance stuff came much later, and that's essentially is Jason, who was my kind of MD for many years, stepped out of the business last year and left three remaining partners to run things. So I've sort of taken on the finance responsibilities now. But yeah, not was what was planned, I suppose. Physio was meant to be the studied route really, and this other stuff sort of come along with it. But I do enjoy it. It's great. It's good.
And it's really interesting because when I think of that piece of it, I know what it's like setting up a business and managing that bit as well as other bits of like physio. You're dealing with the patient, so it does give you a great
Yeah.
insight into it. But you've got quite a decent sized business there, so that's a lot of responsibility managing the
Yeah.
finance of it.
Yeah. I suppose the tricky part now, sort of coming to a juncture where it's that balance, isn't it? You want your business to continue to progress, and it's allocating that time in the right way. So my split now of actually seeing sort of patients is probably down to about 1.5, 2 days a week, and I sort of split that across half days through the week. And basically, as the business needs have grown, obviously that side of things has had to take up more of my time. And I think for anyone else in a position like mine, where you've seen your business sort of grow and evolve, it's a tricky balance to find the fit for that sometimes. I think it's you need to give the business side its just deserves to make sure you continue to see growth, and you're not missing things, and you're, I suppose, remaining top side of the ins and outs. But obviously I love treating patients, and that's the tricky part. It's sort of feels like as one's evolving and growing, I'm almost kind of, I suppose there's a bit less of the passion side of being patient facing, which I got into in the first place. And it's something you have to kind of accept a little bit. I think a lot of business owners would find that is often that balance is the tricky part to get right sometimes.
And then in terms of like just the responsibility for you on managing that, like again, your
Yeah.
company's bigger than ours now, and I know that Emily, who's our general manager, and she looks
Yeah.
after both of those pieces.
Yeah.
Like how have you adapted have you always been naturally good at organization and process? Because that's what's needed, isn't it, for those things?
Yeah, I mean, plate spinning has always been something I've, I suppose I found I can do very well. I think it's been able to try and prioritize your workload in a way where, the really sort of acute and fitting things need to be done, but then kind of organizing other stuff which can be delegated out. So like for us, I think having good managers in place and having good people that we can trust and assign, I suppose, some of the more confidential and some of the more kind of important parts of the business side of things as well, being able to have the right people around you to support with that as well. That's I suppose been something we've tried to work on the last few years, is having the right layers in place. But then obviously as a small to medium sized business as well, that all comes at a cost. So again, it's that sort of balance really. But yeah, it can be tricky. I think for me that the key part I find, if I'm a little bit off of things, it's where I've just basically not organised myself accordingly. and that probably is my biggest, my biggest strength, I would say, is being able to kind of take a lot on all at once. But then, we all know so well you can run the risk of burnout, can't you, and not getting a good work-life balance. So it's still a learning process for me, but I feel like in more recent sort of couple of years, we're getting to a point where it feels like things are being managed really, really well. And I think it takes a bit of trial and error to find that sometimes.
And then because you've got other partners that you've got the business
Yeah.
with, how do you
Split our
do you
roles.
naturally fall into those roles? Like, how do you do that? What are the other roles?
Yeah, pretty much. So the other two partners, we've obviously our clinical director. So he sort of oversees everything kind of, I suppose, from the clinical side of things, whether that be our governance and making sure we're meeting our all of that aspect. Also, Steve will deal with a lot of the stuff that physios might bring to him in terms of concerns with patients or issues with patients or cases that need discussion. James then, who's our third partner, he sort of has all the input with our sort of marketing team and our service development. So he's gone sort of that line. We I suppose our roles as we've all kind of learned as relatively young kind of business partners as well. We've kind of found our feet with that, and it's a case of us trying to play to our strengths, and also sort of learn as we go. Where we're very fortunate. I mean, Jason, who did start sort of the business and gave us our opportunities, he was a great mentor, and I think we all learned, a lot. Jace did all of that on his own essentially, but the business was a smaller sort of outfit then. I mean, we're now up to a realm of kind of just under 50 clinicians across our sites, and then sort of 10 administrators as well. So a business of sort of 60 staff, which I don't know if anyone could do that on their own, but between our split, we've sort of done it that way, and it's worked really well. I think we know our own responsibilities and our own strengths, and what's quite good is that I've known Steve for many, many years, but James and I are also friends and went to university together. So we have a real trust amongst the three of us. I think we found that is a strength for us too, because, I suppose in organizations where people perhaps don't or haven't known each other as long, or have that sort of closeness, I guess, things could sometimes, be difficult to work that way. But I think it's a strength for us that we have that trust in one another, really.
Yeah, no, definitely it's imperative for those business partners. And how do you find it from a dynamic of support, challenge within the senior leadership team of things? Because albeit you've got a clinical director, but you're also clinical. So how do you how do you sort of manage things that maybe you disagree with on things, or one of those guys do?
Yeah, so we have an ops manager too, so she's part of our senior management team as well. And then within the team, we have some other clinical leads who oversee parts of our smaller groups of clinical team as well. We also will lean on kind of outside resources as well for some of our sort of HR and some bits we might find if we come to a conflict, let's say. We'll try to find a solution always amongst ourselves. We've not actually had an instance where we've needed to kind of bring someone else in to resolve a problem, which is a good thing. But we do have a mechanism, in a process as to what we would do in that situation, and that's, I think that's essential. Really, I think it can't always be rosy, can it? We'd be too naive to think that we're not going to run into issues between us. But thankfully, we've yet to face anything like that just yet.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's a testament to being able to raise stuff before it becomes a bigger issue, doesn't it? That's a key bit of it.
I think we've worked with lots of other sort of bigger businesses, whether that be through kind of some of the work we actually do as physios, or just other shared contracts, and sometimes a bit of colleague discussion, or talking to someone else in a similar industry, get their share and view, and sort of get an idea from them. Can really help kind of either, I suppose, confirm your thoughts, or give you another idea of something that perhaps you've not thought of. So I think that sort of, that bit of collaboration is quite good, really. And I guess that's something we've I suppose as a kind of younger business owners have always tried to be open to, whether that be within networking or not being shy to put our hands up if we don't know the answer to something. I think that's important. We can't, as I've said already, like I didn't study business management, so I don't know the answers. Sometimes, it's being able to recognize that and say, in situations where, is there someone else I could lean on? I mean, my dad is one who's got a long history of running businesses, working in business, so he would be someone I would sort of lean on at times, as well. If it's just getting his insight on something, it might be completely unbiased as well, which I think is helpful too.
Yeah, no, it's definitely handy if you've got other people that you can ask about it. So
Yeah.
getting back to you then, so you mentioned briefly about how you ended up doing physio, but like where did you grow up and how did you progress
Brilliant.
into doing that?
So I actually grew up in South Africa, in Cape Town. I lived there till I was 13 years old, and my mum and dad decided they wanted to move to the UK, relocate here, brought my sister and I over. A big part of that decision, I think, was to provide both my sister and I with what they thought to be better opportunities, really. Healthcare was always something I was interested in, and I played a lot of sports. I don't know if that's the South African in me or not, but yeah, basically played every single sport. And in my teens had, a couple of injuries, nothing serious, but went to see a physio a couple of times and thought, yeah, that seems quite a good job. From there, I kind of, as it came to the point of thinking about university applications, I did some work experience, both in the NHS and some private physio stuff, as well as sports. It gave me a bit more of an insight into the role itself, and I suppose the broadness of it, rather than just the thought around sports physio, which often, is a lot of what a lot of, I suppose, young teenage males might be thinking when they're thinking about physio. So it's kind of bit the bullet, applied to universities, got my place, and I haven't really looked back since. I mean, interestingly, when I first qualified, there was a job shortage, and there was a lot of pressure to sort of find that first role quickly. Otherwise, you were almost kind of being pushed to think about another career, which is, it's crazy how you look back on these sort of moments. And actually, for a brief period of time, I did sit the GAMSAT to try looking at, doing the converting to do medicine on one of the postgrads 4-year accelerated kind of courses. And then I got my first role. So thankfully, I actually sat the GAMSAT test, got reasonable results, which would have allowed me to kind of apply for medicine. But I was then offered my first role, a rotational role, and really haven't looked back since. So I suppose that gives a bit of a background to how I got
Yeah,
to work here.
yeah, it's interesting then. So what was that role?
Just a band 5 rotational role initially, which, looking back now, I think it's, I'm not saying it's essential for all physios, but I found that grounding was hugely beneficial for me doing my rotations, seeing all the different aspects of physio working, within the NHS with a whole host of patient types. I feel that, for me, one of my strongest kind of attributes, I think, is communication and being able to communicate with patients. And that broad kind of experience to begin with really kind of, it's a bit like a baptism of fire, I'd say. You come out of university, you've done your placements, you've finished your course, but you don't really know how to treat patients or how to deal with people. You're kind of thrown in at the deep end, and I think it's such rapid learning in an environment like that. And actually, I always found, communication with patients was kind of the bit that got me through that first part, and that's then gone on. And I suppose that communication skill has evolved into the other aspects of what I do now, and being able to, I suppose, manage staff and manage people, and still obviously see patients as well. So that's, I suppose, been a bit of my background and evolution, I guess.
Yeah, and like, in terms of communication, then I fully agree. It's like a main thing. Like, what do you think you did learn doing that? Like, what would you say the essential parts of being a good communicator are?
I would say being able to get, on the patient's level. So, there's nothing worse than going to see a clinician and they explain something to you in medical terms that you don't understand. I always found, if I could get a connection with patients early doors, a bit of early buy-in, basically, then that would really stand me in good stead, because there'd be an element of trust there. So I always found, if I could, explain things to patients in a way that they understood, allow them time to ask questions that they might have, as basic or as advanced as they might have been. I feel like it would create a space for them to build that rapport with me, really, and that would then allow me to kind of guide them going forwards, whether that was, with my advice on what they need to do to get better, or if it was, how to manage their pain, or if it was, the benefits of this treatment or that treatment. I think that sort of buy-in that you get from a patient, communicating effectively with them initially to build that rapport is really the thing that can really help someone on their journey to get better.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. So how long were you in that role for, and where was that?
That was at Barnsley, in the NHS. I was, it's a community-based role. I was there for 2 years. And then within that period of time, I started doing a little bit of work with Barnsley Football Club as well, which was with the academy, a couple of evenings a week, and then weekend matches. That was my sort of first taste of kind of, I suppose, sports physio as well. And I was never shy. I was never work shy. I was always happy to kind of have a full-time role and have some, another aspect of hours in an evening or weekend, which if it was going to further my learning, at that time it was great for me, because I was learning so much and learning from different mentors and different people, whether it was the sports side or the rotational role within the NHS. I think it sort of accelerated my learning to some degree, because I was just being exposed to a lot more in a shorter period of time. I wouldn't advise it to be something that you continue with forever, because it's not sustainable to be working that number of hours. But I feel like it did in those first years of my career, kind of, it jump started things. It gave me, I think at that point I hadn't really decided which area of physio I wanted to specialize in. And I think it helped me kind of get a nice variety of patients and workload in there early doors, which kept me kind of exposed to lots of different aspects, until I kind of a bit later on decided I wanted to go the route of MSK and sort of sports. So from that role, I moved into a band 6 role, which was a sort of a more static MSK role, and then continue with the sports stuff. I was doing a mixture of helping out with various events, some with the LTA in tennis, and then latterly I was working as a contractor with GB Boxing as well, which was great. So I was still able to kind of work with elite athletes, but then the whole time was either in my MSK role in the NHS, or then progressed into private practice in MSK. So I kind of I was always able to kind of, I suppose, have a nice variety of work there, which was great until now. It's obviously just all about the White House Clinic and the business here. Although we do have some nice contracts with various sports teams, so still have that bit of connection to some elite sports, which is great as well.
Yeah. So like the boxing then, was that linked, because Sheffield is at the hub for it from a GB box? Was it linked to that?
Institute for Sports. So GB Boxing are based here in Sheffield, along with several of the other GB sort of sports. But yeah, basically that opportunity was there for me as a contractor, which was great. So I was able to help out with some of their sort of weekend camps, when they might have had sort of emerging talent coming in. Also with the GB sort of boxers themselves, so those fighters who were kind of on the program and involved in kind of the 4-year periods for the Olympics. It was great. I was able to work with some fantastic clinicians, really sort of niche stuff, as well as kind of more broad and general stuff, which is really nice, alongside kind of I suppose the general practice stuff in MSK that you see. So at that point, I was still kind of toying with the thought of kind of, do I go the sports route? But the way it kind of evolved in the end was, my opportunity came here at the White House, and that I think, once I committed to that, was one that was going to be committing me for quite a few years. So it kind of put a stop to the thought around continuing with sport on an independent level. But as I said, what's been quite nice with the White House Clinic here, we've got a couple of contracts in place where we support some of the sports teams around Sheffield. So the Sheffield Sharks basketball team, we support them with their physio and their rehab, as well as we have some input with the Sheffield Steelers ice hockey, and then several sort of football teams locally as well. We help support them. So it's nice that we've got those connections with clubs and sports teams directly, but obviously yeah, not so much on an individual level for me now. Besides a few of the patients I still get into my clinics.
Yeah, you're looking at spreadsheets and other stuff now as well. You got to get
Yes,
those
yeah,
things.
exactly, Andy. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, all the boring stuff that makes it tick, I guess.
different sort of data, but anyway,
Yes,
it's all
exactly.
important.
It is. Yeah, you're right. It is.
So in terms of that, what I remember when I started at my old company, IPRS, and I'd go to Sheffield quite a lot because we did a lot of stuff with the universities and the teams, etc. But I always remember the White House was it was a very well known one on
Yeah,
our route, and you get it's on the route, isn't it, coming from Manchester where I was
yeah,
and still
yeah.
am now.
It is.
So
Yeah,
it's got a good reputation, and it's always
yeah,
had that one of the bigger clinics in the north, I would say.
yes.
So like, what was it like when you went in there then? Because you obviously thought it was a good opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. I think making that leap into private practice from the NHS is quite a daunting one as a young physio. I think there's an element of at times being kind of being told that that's a route you shouldn't be taking, and I think it's very much dependent on the clinic that you might be going to. But yeah, stepping in here from day one, I was exposed to a nice MSK patient list. Jason had already built the clinic's reputation here over a 35-year period, where not only locally was he really well known, but also he had really good links with consultants and orthopedic specialists and GPs. Yeah, I think his marketing strategy historically had been kind of linking in with GPs, trying to encourage private patient referrals that way, as well as kind of working with consultants and specialists, which I suppose perhaps 35 years ago might not have been 30 years ago might be not been a tactic that a lot of private clinics sort of took. Initially, they might have tried to establish themselves within, just the patient community. But I think that link in with professionals from the early days has been really what's allowed the White House Clinic to stand the test of time here, and kind of it's always had a reputation for being a clinic that you would come to for good physio expertise. And I think that was probably what drew me here in the first place. I'd heard about it and known about that, and actually then there's always that thing of you take that leap, and sometimes you can make that step, and you hear people say, "Well, it didn't work out the way I was expecting," but for me it absolutely did, and I felt like I was then able to better my sort of skills here again, more out and out MSK stuff, but also then getting to understand the differences within the private sector compared to the NHS as well. And I think that adaptation for me was one I found quite straightforward. Actually, some clinicians really struggle, but I think that has to only be down to the support I probably had here, and being able to make that transition feel a bit easier as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely is like. And what do you think about that piece of going from the NHS? Or there's a lot of people now that can't get jobs even in the NHS. I had Ash James in from the CSP at the
Yeah,
office a
I
couple of
saw that.
weeks ago, and we were talking about that. It was like 13 roles for the whole country.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, like, where do you see that piece sitting at now?
I think there's a lot more physios turning to private practice now from day of qualifying, and there's lots of clinics out there that will offer good, supported, you know, mentorship, learning, supervision, all of those sorts of things. I think it does mean that newly qualified physios can make that leap straight away. For us at the White House Clinic, it hasn't been, we've not necessarily been able to sort of tap into that so much. Just with, I suppose, the reputation we sort of built had always been one where patients would come to us looking for expertise and experience. So the tactic it's not we've been dismissive of newly qualified. We've got clinicians who've a few years experience who've joined us, and fantastic clinicians, and but we've almost kept in place that ethos of trying to be seen as the place that's got the expertise and the experience. So I think it can work. It's not for every business. You might say that for us, we're missing out on a pool of candidates potentially, but I think we've stuck with that because it's worked for us from a perspective of marketing and what we're trying to sell to patients. I guess it's not to say we won't revisit that in the future. I think we don't want to be missing out on candidates, of course, but it's not been our, I suppose, not been our basis to this point. But I absolutely think it can work if it's in place. You tend to find more of some of the private providers who operate more nationally. They perhaps have got a bit more of that infrastructure in place to support that. But then also, you hear of instances where clinicians have made that leap and they're not being supported in the right way, and that can be very, very damaging to newly qualified physios too. So it's a balance, but it has to be supported properly, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's like definitely for the younger profession, but also just even speaking to people, you can get siloed in your room a lot, can't you? You're
Yeah,
working
absolutely.
independently on things, and
Yeah,
how you create that support, even from a
yeah.
not even from the clinical side, that definitely the clinical side, but just from the social side as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I think, private physio can be a really lonely place. You could be working at a satellite clinic somewhere, essentially where you've got a room being rented within a gym premise, let's say, and you're on your own, fairly independent. It can be quite lonely. And I think that on top of the way in which even diaries can be configured if physios are back to back with patients all morning and afternoon, no time to breathe, not enough non-clinical time in their diary to kind of to ensure that they're getting ahead of their tasks. It can be a really difficult place to work, and you hear of this. This takes place. It's out there. It certainly is a model that we've operated with. I mean, as I said, we've not necessarily gone the route of newly qualified clinicians, but we've certainly got what we think to be a very good structure in place for our clinicians, where we've had really good retention of staff, and I think the gist of that is we've made it a nice environment for our staff to work. So breaking up their morning diaries and their afternoon diaries with ample admin time, giving them opportunities to join sort of debrief calls with a more senior team member, in service training, which we operate and use monthly. I think all these things are ways and strategies in which you can ensure your staff are staying happy and are feeling supported. And it comes at a cost, absolutely. I think we look at this every year and we go, gosh, it's a lot of hours being allocated here for staff support or training, but at the end of the day, it's the people that are working for you that make the business what it is. So that's, I think, has been something that the three of us as partners now have been quite passionate about. We've tried to really hone the environment we offer for our staff to to keep them happy, because ultimately that will provide us with better results for patients, but also a better reputation.
Yeah. Well, if they've got the FD on board, then they've already got half the battle won, haven't
Yeah.
they? More than half.
Of course, the times, Andy, where we have to calm down a bit, but yeah, it is a tricky balance. I think this is where perhaps just the mix of having worked as a physio for many years and then coming across into sort of overseeing our finance, it perhaps made me feel a bit more softened sometimes than as making just finance decisions. It can be so black and white, and sometimes those decisions can be quite ruthless. If they need to be, they have to be. But I think perhaps there's been moments I've been, okay, actually, yeah, well, what's better for our physio here, or what's better for the patient here, rather than just looking at the numbers. And I think that's where perhaps someone in my position who's not come from a finance background but sort of had to learn that element has got the human background in place already, maybe more
Yeah.
so.
No, definitely. No, I think it is really important on it because you do hear it a lot of. So, a lot of physios, like, they run their own business and they manage it. It's like, well, we're not business people. And it's like, well, I'm not sure that many people who get into business are from a business background,
Yeah,
particularly, but
yeah,
understanding the particular business is really helpful because then you
yeah,
do understand all the elements for
yeah.
it.
And I think you've got to recognise shortfalls. I mean, whilst in the role, I've gone in and done, a mini MBA and tried to get, try and get some of that knowledge in there. It's all well and good to know your business inside out and to know everything around your own business inside out, but you've got to have a theory of knowledge as well, which hopefully puts you in good stead to kind of see things a bit clearer, I suppose. That was something I decided I wanted to do because I thought it was gonna better me from that side of things. And I would suggest that's quite good advice to anyone else in a similar position to me, who's maybe thinking, do they need something like that in place? I think it's interesting. I can go and sit at meetings around contracts and with stakeholders and funders and all sorts, and I feel like I've got perhaps have something to give a bit of credibility to my name too when I'm challenging or discussing things. And it's not a case of having imposter syndrome. I think it's just I wanted to have that to feel like it provided me with a bit of good grounding, really, as well.
Yeah. So yeah, our general manager did a mini MBA as well. So how did you find it from that perspective?
Yeah, I found it really useful. I think there's a lot of stuff in there that kind of helped solidify some of the stuff I'd learned. But then there's obviously a lot of new stuff which provided me with, giving me a lot more strategy to some of the finance and account stuff, I guess, which was helpful. But also just about understanding, your business brand and your business values and your business, sort of aims. I think it gave a bit of structure to a lot of the things we had in place, and helped to sort of fill the gaps, I guess, as well. So yeah, I found it really useful. It's a tricky balance, I think, with these things. You kind of, when you're running your own business, time is always a tricky element, and you sort of think, gosh, have I got time to go on and do this course and get on and complete that? Is that going to keep me away from the stuff I really need to get on with the day to day? But actually, in the long run, it's better, it's bettered us, really. So I think you can sort of reflect back and say, yeah, that was definitely the right thing to do. But it can be a tricky call to sort of make, and the timing of that as well is when you do it, when you fit it in.
Yeah.
And it comes back to that balance again. I think for a lot of business owners, for a business our size, it's always that sort of thing of trying to do as much as you can yourself, but also they're not running the risk of being completely burnt out, and not having a good work-life balance in there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's why one of the things that we've been doing the Unbound project, as you know, on that
Yeah,
bit of it. And it's like, I think it's so important to get out of your environment, whether it's to a university course or with peers,
something
because
else.
it's easy
Yeah,
to just be sat in your business doing stuff all the time.
absolutely.
And it's just
Yeah,
like you're in it, and it's like you got someone comes in, and it's sort of like getting out of it. I found it so helpful for me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we can get really set in our ways, can't we? We can kind of, can almost be an element of Groundhog Day and going through the motions when kind of what you need to do month to month. It can feel a bit like that sometimes. I think, whether it's turning to networking stuff or whether it's tapping into colleagues, in a similar position, forming, like you said, a community or network with people. This is what I found quite interesting around the Unbound project, and that it's that aspect of it which, I think as business owners, we all should be helping each other. We need to move away from this thought. I think if we really want to kind of protect, MSK Physio in the right way, move away from this thought that we're all against one another, and actually try and work a bit more collaboratively and a bit more together. Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to achieve the same thing, and that's to help people. So, I think why not assist one another than trying to work against one another? But it's a tricky thing. We can get very protective about our own babies per se, can't we? And our own resource and our own stuff. So I think it's being able to kind of I suppose view the bigger picture from that side, to kind of look at that option really and explore it properly.
It is like, and I see so many people and meet a lot of people. Like we've had good chats in the past about stuff, and I know that that's your philosophy, and there's other people that are like that. There's other people that aren't, and like you say, you understand it,
Yeah,
but it's like there's so much growth opportunity within the sector to do it in the right way, not just to make money from it, but to add really good value. That's what I see as the opportunity, and I always focus on what's the growth opportunity, and not just like,
yeah.
right, do you want to just take more business from the person down the road? It's like
Next door.
not that
Yeah,
at all.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think there's enough space and enough patience and opportunity for us all to flourish. You'd hope, anyway. I think we can have slightly different models or different views on things, but there should be enough opportunity there for all.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. So in terms of like your role then, so how did you progress to being the FD?
So that came much later. So I mean, Jason historically, as our IMD, he kind of oversaw all the finance of the business, and kind of, whilst we all had access to the bank account and would all be aware of payments in and out, expenditure and all the rest, he kind of just historically had that, because it was always sort of his to begin with. So as we kind of made the call and sort of were looking at the decision as to when he was going to sort of step away from things, we had a really good kind of transition period over a couple of years where he was still kind of overseeing all of it, but was kind of exposing me and to it, and essentially mentoring me with it. So we did it over a kind of a 2-year period, and that worked really well, because it wasn't like he's there one day and then he's gone. It was kind of like we had enough opportunity over a couple of accounting years to basically, for me to learn and understand, the ins and outs of the finance of our business. And that also involved working with the business accountant and, all the other aspects, involved in that too, whether it was, the finance within our NHS contracts or some of our private contracts. Yeah, that transition period, I think, was what really kind of helped, because it wasn't just, as I say, kind of like, right, today you're doing this, and that was kind of just on my plate. I don't think it would be possible to do it that way. I think you need that sort of training, that mentorship in some capacity, but also you have to learn and understand your own business. And I didn't learn about spreadsheets. I didn't learn about profit and loss sheets. I had to go away and do that myself. If there was, what was quite useful with his mentorship is that if something came up and I was like, what is this? He's like, I'm not telling you, go home and read about it. It was kind of, and it was almost like picking up a finance book 101, but you learn and you have to, and that's I think the gist of it with these things, I think with any of these opportunities that might arise for clinicians who kind of see themselves going into owning their own business or having one, like, you can't just expect to know this stuff without putting the work in. I think you've got to put some graft in there, really. And that was kind of the way we did it, with a sort of a 2-year transition, and it seems to really fit. I mean, the nice thing is he's not completely out of the picture now, so we've still got him around as a bit of a consultancy if we need to check and query on things. But so far so good. It's been great. We're over a year now since he stepped away, and we've had as good a year as any really, and it's almost been proof that we can do it on our own as the three that we are, which has been nice. So
that's really good. How did it start? Like, at what point did you start to think, actually, I'm being groomed to do this, or were you actively doing
funny.
it?
It kind of just evolved on its own. I think naturally, as the workload was there for us, and with what we were doing, I was doing some of the ops stuff, and was involved working very closely with Jace for some of our contracts, whether that be setting them up, whether that be getting all that side of things organised. And obviously with that, there was a bit of a gradual exposure to some of the finance, how the contracts were financed, how they would work, how we would structure them from a payment perspective, how we'd staff them up. And I guess that was my first kind of insight to it. And I suppose as the more and more that went on, the more and more trust was coming from Jason to kind of expose me to more and more. And I think that was just kind of the way it sort of went. And at that point, it was myself and Steve, who were partners with Jason. James came later, but that was kind of the way it was sort of going with me and Jace. It was kind of like, I think he was sort of seeing me as the next one to sort of take that on, and that's kind of just the way we went with it, really. It's funny, you can sort of look at these moments and think, these almost like sliding door moments, aren't they, where if I hadn't gone that route, might have been something else, or would I've never come to this side of having this within my working role now. It's but I think sometimes these opportunities present, and you either grasp them fully or you shirk. And I guess that's something that can mold the next 20 years of your life. It's crazy, really.
No, it is. It is funny, isn't it, on those things? Because I guess it was quite nice for the team as well, as that you've been there for a long time as well.
Absolutely.
So
it's And I think this is it. I think it from that side, it's I've been at the clinic now for over 13 years, and obviously the first 6 or 7 years of that was as a working physiotherapist. But you're still learning the ins and outs. You understand what it is that you're trying to sell to patients essentially here, and having that understanding of the business before becoming a partner, but then obviously learning within the partner role as well. It's gradually just adding more and more layers to it, I suppose, as that's feasible, I suppose, and as that feels doable. But so grateful for my opportunities, and sometimes you sort of look back and you go, gosh, it's been a ride, hasn't it? And you have to sort of scratch yourself in the back a little bit to sort of to be really grateful for it.
Yeah.
Gratitude is something we should all practice. And there are days where it's difficult, and I think, gosh, this is hard, but on the whole, I'm very, very grateful for the opportunities I've had, and what that's, I suppose, how that's allowed to mold my career.
But also, I think taking them as well, isn't it? And reflecting on,
Absolutely.
yes, you're grateful, but also you've made it happen by doing all
Yeah,
this stuff.
I think so. Yeah, I think, as I said, you've got to grab the chance if it's there, and if you don't, well, that might never come back again. So it's, I think for me, I've always been very sort of proud of anything I would do, whether it was, treating a patient, a bit of homework at school, playing sport. I think giving 100% always is always stood me in pretty good stead, really, through my life. And I suppose I'm thankful to my parents for bringing me up that way and ingraining that in me. But yeah, it certainly seems to be serving me well now, so that's good.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great to hear. And like, I know there's other elements of the business as well. Like you've got some other sort of stuff that you do. So talk to me
Yeah.
about that.
So we try and offer kind of as much to patients as we can. That can range from really specialized treatments to kind of more sort of medical based stuff as well. So we have a sports medical consultancy service that we run here. We've got two very, very good and very reputable sports med consultants. We then have a host of kind of specialized sports services that can be very, very niche. We have sort of a very niche climbing clinic service, which is run here, where I think we're seeing something like over 120 climbers a month with various injuries and aches and pains. We've got, the more specialized things which you'd almost expect to be as fairly standard now: ultrasound scanning, um, you know, focused shockwave, radial shockwave, you know, a neurophysio service. We've got nutrition kind of service in place as well. I suppose we've tried to keep, classes and other kind of well-being stuff as well. We've tried to kind of, I suppose, look at our patients' journey as they come into the clinic, and look at ways that we can offer them support and help in many aspects of their life, not just when they're in pain. And that's, I suppose, it's been a good thing for us as a business as well, to kind of keep patients within our realm as they're on their journey. Whether that's preventative or for rehab, or just for living better quality lives, I suppose. We've also found that what's worked really nicely. We've kind of tried to empower some of our physios when they've joined us. If they've got a particular area that they're passionate about, whether it's a sport or something outside of work, we try and encourage them to bring that to work. And if there's a service or something we can offer using their skill sets, and giving them a bit of, I suppose, responsibility to develop something, then we found that's been a good way to kind of to sort of start and look at to offer new services as well. And that's been quite sort of organic in a way, because it's been dependent on the team member coming in, but that's kept staff happy too. So it's that whole merry-go-round of, if it can benefit patients but also keep your team members happy, then it's a win for all, really. So yeah, it's. I think it's funny. I'll speak to friends or people who don't, haven't been to the White House before. Speak to someone, and they'll go, "Oh, you offer an awful lot." It's, but we do. We try to, and it's not just offering it as tokenism. It's trying to offer it as a specialist expertise, really, as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea, isn't it? You get people. I'm a big believer as well, as you get your team really
Yeah,
enjoying doing what they love doing. Even you can't, like, there's always going to be admin and stuff to do, but get
of
them
course.
doing stuff that you're really invested in, and it just makes it way more enjoyable. So everyone's going to be happier.
Does. Yeah, it does. And I think I think with these things, when you look at it from the business perspective too, you never quite know what these opportunities might evolve or lead to. And essentially, it can be a way of opening doors that you didn't know existed. And that's, I think, I think it's been great for us from that side. But also sometimes it doesn't always work out either. So it's learning as well. But yeah, it has served us really well. And I think this way it's interesting. We've had clinicians applying for roles with us because they have heard that, there would be opportunities for them to perhaps come up with a service or work in a part of physio that they really, really enjoy, or they've really, got a lot of passion in, and that's nice to hear. I think that's been quite nice when we've had those applications come in, or heard those things, because clearly a bit of word gets around, and that's nice. It's nice to know that we've been spoken of in that way, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Like I saw a post on LinkedIn from Nathan Carter from Chiswick Physio, and he was talking about that physio's responsibility is not to be the financial advisor of the patient, which is,
Yes.
it sucks into the sales piece. So where do you sit on that as well then? Because it's like, I think it's a really good point to be made, because there is that balance of your clinician first, but then you're running a
Yeah.
business. Where do you see that?
We've found, for us, really providing good and honest advice is what's brought patients back. We've never had an ethos here where it's been a sales pitch, or a scaremongering tactic, even at worst you hear of, trying to get patients to come back multiple times when they don't need to. I think we found, providing honest advice and advising patients on what they really need has been sometimes, perhaps meant someone's not, they might have come in for fewer visits, but at the same point, that's meant they've gone away feeling that they've been given, honest advice, which has meant if they have an issue in the future, they would return. And I think, as physios, we're not salesmen. We're not here. We should be being pressured to be salesmen either. I think, yes, it is a business, but I think if you do things in the right way, and have people come back to you for the right reasons, then that business should still be sustainable. I think diversifying and offering different services, and offering whether it's more modern equipment, or other types of services which draw people in, would be a better tactic to generate revenue than trying to force patients to come back more than they need to. I think that's the tactic, again, we've kind of gone with, alongside the honest advice to people. And that would be my advice to anyone else kind of in a similar position. We all know of those clinics who use those tactics, and they're not spoken about nicely. We certainly don't want to be seen to be falling into that remit, for us anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then finally, like, where do you see, like, we talk about tech, but like, where do you see AI and other innovations
It's
going?
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. So I had a call with our accounts manager for our practice software that we use, and they're looking to implement an AI into their note writing capacity, which will be phenomenal for our staff, time saver, but also, I suppose, accuracy as well, just in terms of, within the consultation, it will cleverly record, with consent, of course, but record the consultation, then provide a summary in a clinically physio regulated way, which I think, as far as we know, it's the only provider at the moment who've got potentially this coming into their software, and it will be offered as part of the package that we have, which is great. It's not coming as additional cost. Now, I think we have to explore these things. If the technology is there and it's allowing us to be more efficient, to to deal with things in ways that perhaps are easier and better, then we've got to explore that. I don't think we should be frightened of it. I think there's a balance with this as well. I suppose the downside to this could mean that it reduces your admin outlay, and that might mean that you don't require the same number of administrators as you might have done previously. But I think this is the way the world's moving, isn't it? And I suppose as those opportunities might reduce, they should create opportunities elsewhere. So it's something that's exciting. It's interesting. I'd be keen to see this one anyway in use once it's there. But that's just one aspect, of course. But yeah, it's something I think we should be embracing rather than being sort of frightened of, really.
Yeah, no, I think it's the same as your point you were saying about the collaborative piece, rather than being scared of
Yes,
something, or ultimately it all comes down to that. It's like embracing it just is a better way of doing it, because
absolutely.
everyone, it'll move everyone
It's
forward.
not going away, is it? It's going to be here. It's going to stay. It's only going to evolve. I think best to try and get on that journey from the start than later down the line.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Look, Greg, really enjoyed it. I really enjoy working with you and the guys at the clinic as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing where you take the business. And thank you for sharing your insights.
Thanks so much, Andy. That's great. Thank you.